What's up, Otakus? Thanks for hanging out and jumping on. Um, it's Friday night, and you don't have any comic books to share, unfortunately. Didn't pick anything up this week. Um, Actually, I did pick up something this week, but I already went on air and showed that off. So you can check out that video. It's posted earlier in the week. It was just a small haul, 5 books for $2. No major pickups or keys in that haul, uh, but it was really representative of. Actually, there was one big key. I think the first appearance of Superman's resurrection and the black suit first appearance. That's a pretty big key issue. There are just so many copies of that issue that it really wouldn't amount to much. But I know a lot of collectors from that era who were collecting in that era, especially if you're, I think, a kid and you read those comics, just the impact that that entire run and story might have had on you um, as a Superman fan, or hopefully it got you into Superman. But it was a, a really pivotal and key book in the 90s, historic book, just for the sheer publicity that the death of Superman brought, because I think that shocked a lot of people outside of comics, even who love the character, who love the IP. But I'm just gonna grab a comic real quick. Hang on, just a second here. Just have the book. Here we go. All right, so we're doing our weekly sort of feature on kind of like the time machine, the comic book time machine, where we kind of go back to a time, a period in comic books, and we talk about that time period. It's a look back, kind of way to, I think, and re-emphasize why we love comic books. I think, the reason people collect toys, people collect comic books, maybe even sports cards. It's just to remember um, when they were growing up, maybe watching their favorite player, sports or athlete, or reading a comic book from when they were a kid, or playing with toys from when they were a kid. But it just takes you back to that time. Hey, Miss So, good to see you. I'm doing better. Yeah, thank you for asking. Thank you for joining. Yeah. Um, I think this channel is just an outlet for me to um, kind of manage. I wouldn't say manage, but uh, better deal with my stress. Definitely think the hobby is an outlet for my stress and for things that kind of weigh on you. If you're having a tough time, um, I know it helps me, and I know that doesn't make sense for a lot of people. Maybe why something most people would view as like trivial, uh, something just odd, would bring me comfort and just an escape, I guess, from whatever issues you're dealing with. But they do, and I'm sure a lot of you, yeah, I'm sure a lot of you understand that sentiment and can identify with that. But yeah, we're gonna take you back to October of 1985. Now, when you're a kid, you just have memories, right? You don't have specific maybe if you have a specific memory where you know the exact date, like like your 10th birthday, you remember that day vividly. But for most of us, it's kind of like we have all these memories and it have a date range. We know we were maybe 9 or 8, maybe we were 10 or 11, something somewhere around there. Um, and that's how we kind of navigate. Uh, exactly, right? So October 95, let me just kind of put it in context. Earlier, so this is fall. We're into fall. We're back to school. We're going. I entered the 5th grade in 1985, right? Sorry. No, I entered the 6th grade in 1985. That's right. I was a 6th grader. So it was a big kind of like, you're kind of, that was for me my last year at elementary school. So you're kind of the big kids at elementary school. Um, You've kind of grown. You definitely are kind of pulling away from the childish kind of behaviors, uh, seeing yourself more as like a young adult, right? Even though 6th grade is far from a young adult, but I mean, you're kind of entering the tween years, the teen years, and yeah, um, I hope October 1985 brings back some very vivid, specific memories. I I have very, very vivid memories of 5th to 6th grade, especially 6th grade. Um, Now, we'll get more into um, 6th grade as we go along. I've got some things, lined up, but we're going to focus on October of 1985. So, uh, the summer of this year, you saw just a plethora of hit movies. Terminator, right? I think The Goonies came out that summer, which they're planning to remake, right? They're planning to remake The Goonies. Um, but Back to the Future was the really big blockbuster hit of the summer of 1985. Yeah, there were so many good movies that year. You're absolutely right. I mean, just The Goonies and Back to the Future, those two right there. I mean, that's right, like hands down, your childhood, right? How many times did we rewatch those two movies? Um, but yeah, it was just a fun summer. I remember, and I remember the Terminator also came out right that summer, if I'm not mistaken. And right, yeah, the Terminator came. No, the Terminator came out in '84, I think. So I might be off in my memory there. But anyway, a bunch of good movies came out. Um, Rambo, yeah, Rambo came out. Rambo 2, not 1, Rambo 2, which was more intense than Rambo 1. That launched like action figures and like cartoons and all that. But that was a huge one. Really uh, catapulted Sylvester Stallone into like superstardom. And of course, we're going to talk about uh, another superstar as we get into it. But let's take you back to October 1985. Probably the big book in comic books that year was Crisis on Infinite Earths, number 7. And this is a very key issue because of someone's death. And, right, this is the big event going on at DC. And it's kind of it running in parallel with Secret Wars, but Secret Wars obviously came out first, but they're both like monthly serials, sort of 12-ish issues, like you know uh, 12-issue miniseries that's dedicated to sort of a publishing crossover. So they're both doing things very similar. Now, whether you think Secret Wars was a better series or whether you think Crisis on Infinite Earths was a better series, I've read both. I like both a lot. Um, I have good memories of both. But I think if you talk about uh, which series was better, I'm gonna have to go with Crisis because it was such it was dealing with the multiverse, and it was like had such a, not that the multiverse was new. There were definitely, they played around with it um, at Marvel and DC. It was a kind of a motif, as like, even the whole What If series, right? That's a motif on timelines and um, multiverses. But this one really transformed because there was this reset DC in a lot of ways, and such a big pivotal moment in DC. So in terms of like, Secret Wars had a big impact, but it didn't. Once it ended, everybody kind of returned back to their regularly programmed books, and life went on. Well, this one, it kind of reset the whole universe, and especially Superman's timeline. We got a brand new reimagining of Superman. We got a sort of a darker, more grittier version of Batman, and just a new Wonder Woman series came out after this. So it was just kind of like the whole DC universe was set in this more modern, uh, integrated, connected space, and that was really, really, I think, impactful. You also had um, two legendary collaborators who had been working on the new Teen Titans, um, and that led that collaboration, that partnership, the brilliance of that, the artwork, the writing, uh, coalesced into this beautiful story. And yeah, I would obviously, if you're a comic book fan, you've read this book in all likelihood. But if you haven't, I would highly recommend you doing so because it'll give you a new appreciation for DC content. There are just so many DC characters that are interwoven throughout this series. Um, and it just kind of gives you a new look at um, a lot of those characters and how they kind of relate or how they don't relate. And I think Wolfman does a pretty good commentary on a lot of the characters, how they're of a bygone era, and so in the modern sense, in the modern world, they wouldn't have much relevance except in our, you know, in that the context of that memory or the context of that time. So um, just a really overall uh, uh, inspiring commentary on how important timelines and engagements, and I always say destiny, right? Destiny, that time point when you engage with something and it becomes part of your destiny. I always kind of harp on that, but no book better illustrates that than this pivotal series. So give that a read; you'll enjoy it. All right. Yeah, Explorers. That was another one. Like River Phoenix. That was a great movie, and that was Ethan Hawke, right? Um, I love that movie. Lady Hawk. Yes, we get Michelle Pfeiffer, who is so like hauntingly beautiful in that movie. But I love that story. Great acting by uh, Broderick. What's his name? Ah, I'm forgetting the actor's name. Matthew Broderick. Matthew Broderick is in that movie, and he was also in War Games from that year. So he was just like blowing up. And I think soon after he would do Ferris Bueller's Day Off, right? So it was just like his star was rising as well. Um, so yeah, just a great time. So now what we're gonna do is we're gonna Yeah, they were so young back then. Michelle Pfeiffer, I mean, this is just because I was a kid back then, so they weren't too much older than me. I think Broderick was like, yeah, he must have been in his like early 20s, if that. Same with Pfeiffer. Right? Pfeiffer must have been in her maybe mid 20s, early to mid 20s. Um, so we're gonna do the comic book jukebox, and I'm gonna play a song that was charting um, on the top charts in October of '95. And what's interesting is I remember hearing this first song not around this period because I know it was viral um, by this time, but a little later. So, but I do have a strong connection to this. My entire family just loved watching that music video, the Aha music video. So if you know Aha, you already know where I'm going with this. Um, this is the video I want to show you, and we're gonna just kind of play the music because when I show videos on YouTube, they don't like that. So here we go. I'll turn it up so you guys can hear it. Oops. Turn down a little bit. Keep sleeping. I absolutely agree. That video is still masterfully, with all the animation in that. It's a brilliant video, and it still holds up. I absolutely agree. And the lead singer of Aha was I think very very handsome and good looking. I think that's kind of what sold that group. But that's a great song though. Um, Again, the video's very romantic and fun. There's some drama in there as well, but that was a big hit for Aha. And I can't say if Aha had it because they're from Australia, if I'm not mistaken, right? They're uh, an Australian group, but I can't recall if they've had another hit. I think that was kind of like their one hit. Well, I'm sure they had a couple like minor hits, but we never really heard from Aha again. Um, like a lot of 80s groups, right? You just kind of have these like one hit wonders peppered throughout the history. But man, that song alone, that's all you need. I mean, it's embedded and ingrained in our uh, sort of mass or popular culture, right? Everybody loves that song. Hey, Damien, what's up? Thanks for joining. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure you remember October of 1985. You're a little older back in the day, and curious to know what you thought of that period. But of course, there was a lot. We were just talking about what was going on in pop culture. We already mentioned some great movies from 1985: Back to the Future, Goonies, Lady Hawk, um, Explorers. Those were all great movies. You were 24. Okay, 1985. So you were an adult already. Interesting. I was in sixth grade, so uh, that's good. So what was it like? Were you collecting comic books? You probably did. What were your thoughts when this hit the stands and you read this comic book, Damien? Hopefully you had fun with that one. It's talking about its significance to the DC um, universe and how it kind of reset everything. And DC's, the success of this series has continued to drive DC to kind of reset things, have these kind of crisis moments. Um, and, Marvel's kind of doing that now through the cinematic universe and um, the Spider-Verse and all that. But this idea of like going back and changing and having two completely parallel uh, outcomes or universes that model people, you know, basically there's maybe an evil version of me somewhere, but it's all based on a series of infinite types of scenarios and choices and how they keep continuing to branch and bracket off. It's kind of, it messes with your head a little bit, but it also makes sense, right? Yeah, people, I think, don't give DC enough credit for a lot of the quality content they were putting out in the 80s because Marvel was just so, you know, uh, chock full of young talent, right? They were really branding themselves as sort of innovative in terms of what these artists, younger artists, were doing. Um, but yeah, there was a lot going on at DC, but I think people tend to think, okay, Marvel, they have a lot of titles and a lot of things where artists are really innovating, and DC was just Batman, right? They had Batman, and then there were some really great Batman stories, but there were, great stories all around, um, I think, but it was getting kind of overshadowed by um, a lot of the um, Marvel was just a little bit more marketable, I think, among comic book fans. But DC definitely got a boost with all the Batman, um, Warner Brothers Batman movie interest in the character, so that helped boost sales of Batman comics. But yeah, it was pretty competitive, but a great time to be reading and collecting comic books for sure. Yes. So we heard Aha, and I just want to mention. So we were talking about some movies, but the top box office movie at the time, October 1985, and you guys are going to kind of be shocked, was Commando by Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I watched Commando way back in the day, and um, it was a fun movie. It was a good movie, but it definitely was like trying to play off of Rambo's success. It just felt like it was like, yeah, it was just like a copycat version of Rambo, but a little bit more fun, a little bit, trying to bring out Arnold's, kind of range in acting, that he could do comedy and all these things. And it was really when we started to see Arnold, this was like um, leading up to his Predator role. He'd already, knocked it out of the park with Terminator. Um, and then he does this role where he's starting to establish himself as a leading man in action movies, and then comes Predator, and Predator was such a big hit as well. So it was kind of like watching Arnold's fame rise. But Commando was really cheesy. It was just a very cheesy kind of like, I don't know. It just was kind of um, far fetched and out there. But a lot of just kind of those like one-liner Schwarzenegger moments that are just key to like his movies. I think what makes him so enduring is just those like "I'll be back" or "See you," was it "See you later" or something like that. All these like cheesy kind of one-liners that he's known for. If you look at what stills on collections, it's 80s DC, Swamp Thing, Teen Titans. Yeah, for sure. I was just mentioning the new Teen Titans. That run was it's obviously through straight through the 80s, from the early 80s through the mid 80s. But yeah, it was definitely on par with I wouldn't say it was like, it was kind of a response to X-Men, right? Because it was this like new younger team that was created. But man, I absolutely agree. The writing is on par. The art is on par with the X-Men series. Um, I just felt like it didn't. X-Men was such a popular. The Cockrum and Claremont, and then Byrne Claremont. That run with the new characters was just such a focal point of collectors that that's my life. That it was, really, I think, overshadowing anything else resembling it. So, which is unfortunate. But for DC fans, yeah, definitely the new Teen Titans was immensely popular. And if you go back and read it now, it's fun. I'm not gonna say it's not it's definitely different from the X-Men, but I think in terms of quality, they're both there. Yeah, I think Superman. I've talked about this on the channel quite a bit, but I think Superman's popularity was just waning, um, and it was large in part to, um, I think, Frank Miller's, everybody, as a comic book fan, Frank Miller's Dark Knight Returns was like the comic book that I think everybody read. Um, and, it just positions Superman in a kind of a negative light. Basically, you're like taking the most popular character in comic books, and you put him in this story where everybody's kind of aging out and stuff, but he's still young, and his ideology changes, and he's no longer the superhero that he used to be. He's become this sort of political puppet and arm of the government, uh, sort of an American nationalist, if you'd say, like, right? And he's fighting wars in different countries for the government. So I mean, he like paints a very negative picture of Superman. And I think that one, that piece alone did a lot of detriment to the character, and then Batman's popularity just exploded with the movies. So I just feel like Superman never regained his footing as the most popular character. He kind of got really overtaken by Batman, and to this day, I hear so many fans be like, their favorite character is Batman and all this, and um, not to say Batman's not a great character. He's definitely one of my favorite characters as well, but I just disagree with that um, assessment that Batman's more compelling than Superman, because Superman's still my favorite character. So right, especially in the early '80s or early '90s, I absolutely agree. Yeah, and Batman has continued to have just the movies. Like um, the Keaton movie spawned like 3 or 4 Batman movies, and it's gonna wait till the vacuum stops. Right, vacuum's not stopping. Okay, yeah, yeah, they are. There's They're both orphans, but yeah, they have completely different upbringings, right? Superman's more of a working class. Uh, he's adopted, had a very His parents were his adoptive Earth parents, whereas Batman was uh, right around the age where you'd be most traumatized from losing your parents, right? You built, you have a good, core uh, memories of growing up with your parents and having them be your guardians and caretakers, and remembering that love, and then having that all violently taken away from you. um, it set him on a different path. So yeah, I mean, that very it's almost polar opposites in terms of childhoods, but and also in terms of like powers and what they can do. So yeah, and I think that's why Batman, Superman, like they're connected. They've always been best friends. Um, since early on when they were introduced, um, to kind of help each other, right? They've always been, and I think that it kind of blossomed in the golden age, Batman Superman's relationship, but it continued on, and it's been the cornerstone of those two characters. They're just almost like inseparable. When you talk about Batman and Robin as being the dynamic duo, but like, I think entrenched in that history is also the histories of Batman and Superman, and the fact that they're friends, the fact that they kind of know each other's identities. I mean, it's kind of like, they don't make that too well known, but they both know each other's secrets, and they um, trust each other with that. And the more important thing is they both are intent on protecting the innocent, protecting the people. Well, Superman's sort of more broad. Batman's sort of more focused on Gotham, but they're still their intents are this the same. But yeah, and then Batman, kind of gets gritty and dark um, in the Bronze Age, and that carries through. And now Batman's just one of those like tortured souls that goes out and like fights crime his own way. And Superman's a very different character. So yeah, definitely. Is it? Brainiac is coming to shrink down Seattle. I hope not. Um, she knows I'm doing a show, but she's like that sometimes. She'll just yeah. That's my wife. Um, but yeah, it's that is 1985. So Commando, Arnold Schwarzenegger. Um, Hope that brings back some good memories of your childhood. But I think that was the whole Rambo military kind of um, impact that period had. I know a lot of kids were wearing like camouflage fatigues and like you know um, doing those kinds of things based off of the Rambo movies. And I think later you'd get Red Dawn. Remember Red Dawn, and the communists, the Russians attacked and um, invaded the U.S. That was a pretty intense movie. Yeah. Well, I did appreciate the whole Catwoman, the Tom King Catwoman series, where that man was kind of like, he was in love. They're going to get married, and kind of turn, he was going to um, kind of relegate all that um, baggage and duty to Nightwing, and he was it looked like he was heading for retirement and ready to settle down and call it a day and marry Selena. But uh, Selena's the one who basically, called it quits and realized that, she was being selfish and all that. So I mean, it was just great. I really enjoyed that, the way they kind of wrapped it up and tied it. Um, the complexity of that relationship, as well as they're both um, dealing with their demons. But everybody stays there. Yeah, I mean, everybody loves New York City, but that's Gotham for you. Yeah, art was absolutely gorgeous. Story was well written as well. All right, well, that is. Thank you guys for joining this edition of sort of our weekly look back. I'm basically taking a bunch of the comic books from my collection, focusing on the ones that I think people remember, the significant ones, and just time traveling back to that period. So we covered, um, you know, dates in the 80s, and then in 1984, I think we did what, December 84. We did Van Halen's Jump from, I think, what was it, May of 1984. We just did this one. So hopefully I'll get to plan some more and just do these like kind of reminiscent flashbacks with you, covering comic books and the things going on in our lives at the time. And so if you're old enough to remember this period, it was a golden time for being a kid, I think. It was, I mean, really is what I think. If you talk about our current culture, where we're consuming movies, music, and all this, it just was uh, born out of the 80s. They commercialized everything, and we we love it. we're better off for it. So hope to see you back here Friday evenings. We'll do more of these sessions. So thanks, guys, for joining. Jay, thanks for joining, man. I see you. And we will see you here next week. Otaku out. Peace.